Throughout these 24 hours of reality, we're joined by a remarkable and eclectic group of speakers from every perspective. And right now, it's my pleasure to moderate one of our interactive town halls where your questions about our climate reality drive the conversation. I'm happy to welcome back Maggie Grace. Maggie Grace, look at me. Your beauty is stunning. That's why I'm fumbling. So, Maggie, before I get started on everyone's questions, I have to admit I love the fact that you and Ian are both on the show.
So
and
crazy.
you both work together on Lost. You know, was it filming in that beautiful location in Hawaii that really kind of helped you cement your environmentalism?
You know, it's fun. It could be. I think we both had friends that work with the organization, but maybe that's part of the coincidence. I think it's true that when you get the immense gift of getting to live, you know, in an ecosystem like that, you have a front row seat, and it's hard not to see that everything's really interconnected. So yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Well, take me from the beginning. When did you decide that you really wanted to do something about you know, climate change and the environment?
I think, you know, as a little girl growing up in Ohio, which is an awesome state, I got to spend a lot of time in the woods, and I do think you start to get a sense of everything being connected. But I think, you know, seeing an inconvenient truth was really a game changer. I think that's kind of the shift, right? Like, we used to think about environmentalism as like tree huggers that don't shower and wear Birkenstocks and patchouli and eat granola. And and I am a tree hugger myself, but I think it's really shifted from being environmentalism, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there were more trees and grass, to being a question of, are you pro-human? Because if you're pro-humans, you know, we've had a good run and we've learned a lot, but we need to really adjust to this. And it's something that, you know, if we didn't, we'd go the way of the dinosaurs, but luckily, we're a lot better at adapting and we're a lot smarter. So I really feel like we can get a handle on it. And in the last couple of years, it just feels like this incredibly hopeful time that, you know, we've got critical mass now, not just with, you know, people really accepting that this is reality and we can each do something to be a part of the solution, but also with technology making leaps and bounds ahead of what we predicted.
So I want to start with that. What do you think is some of the small things that people can do every day to help?
I think, you know, they're not downers. They're fun and they're good for us and they're good for our communities. And I think it's a time when we're all examining communities differently too. So it's anything from, you know, shopping for vintage clothing instead of making new, because it's going to cost, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I think it's 500 and some gallons for every new pair of jeans. Like, you know, that's something. And I think it's thinking about our consumer choices differently, thinking about a triple bottom line if you have a business. But it's as you go through your day, it's, you know, you can bike and walk more, which is also going to make you, like, from my personal experience, a lot happier. And, you know, if you can think about your lifestyle in that way and maybe commute that way to work by bicycle, and I think just go to the farmer's market and make a really delicious meal out of mostly veggies. I think it's not just the choices we make as individuals and we think, well, is that just a drop in the bucket? It's also about your lifestyle influences everyone around you, and it inspires everyone around you. And the more we kind of get those aggregate choices together, the more that, you know, big business creates more sustainable options for us too.
And I think as women, we also need to look at our makeup closets and our clothes closets.
Sure.
And look and think of, not only, it might be an eco brand, but you also want to look into packaging, shipping.
That too. And the most sustainable thing is the thing already in your closet or already in somebody else's closet.
Yeah.
So I kind of have that moment as, you know, as actors, they're always kind of glamorizing this crazy life we must lead in these, you know, and it's like, you know, stuff has not been the things that make me happy, if I'm totally honest. And so when I look at, like, moments in my life when it's been time to make a lifestyle change, or, you know, like, move out, not live with roommates anymore and get my own place, or buy a car, or things like that, the decisions that I feel most happy with were also green ones. They were just really good for me too. Like, I live, you know, when I decided to move out on my own, in a cottage, you know, it's 2 rooms, and it's it's all I need, and I don't have AC. I have, a couple of fans and the breeze, and, we don't need these gazillion square foot houses to be happy. And I don't want to be a part of the, the Hollywood kind of, idea that you would be happy if you had this crazy, super fast car. It's like, I love my used car that I got on Craigslist. It's great gas mileage.
Well, and I have to admit, I have an all-electric new car, but it's all torque. So that thing is like 0 to 30
totally
faster than an M3. So I'm like, okay, I'll take that.
I think so.
And no fumes.
I think we're just, we're bringing green into the equation, but we're also thinking about values in our families and our communities, and maybe simplicity is a value, maybe freedom's a value. It's not the 80s anymore. We don't need bling bling all the time. So
what's one of the decisions in your life, your green decisions, that you're most proud of?
I think the one that is probably the most impactful was kind of under my nose the whole time, and I was just learning about methane and the beef and dairy industry, and I'm not a vegan, but I think just thinking about meals differently and thinking about portion sizes differently, and do I really need to eat meat at every meal or dairy at every meal? No, and I feel better when I don't. It's more about making veggies kind of the center of my, nutritional universe. And you can cut your food emissions in half just by eating mostly veggies, not even giving things up completely, just by kind of shifting the way you think. And, I think it does feel oddly empowering to feel like you're a part of the solution with every single meal.
I agree. My husband and I, we're weekday vegetarians. So
nothing with the face on a
weekday? On the weekend, I'm like, on the weekend I can have a good grass-fed steak, but I know some people are,
Yeah, exactly.
And I really like the way that you're posing this. It's not a, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do, because everything is so personal.
Yeah, it is personal, and people have different things to consider. Some people have families, some people have kids with different needs and things like that nutritionally. I think, it's more about really shifting the way you think about it and not being so alienated by this black or white, all or nothing kind of eco-piety. Some people are very judgy, right?
They are. And I think for me, I'm still newly into the space.
Sure.
And when I first started, I remember thinking, my gosh, I can't eat this, I can't wash my hair with this, I can't do this, oh my gosh. And it was so much information. What advice can you give people when they're facing all those, kind of that laundry list of things that you're not supposed to do, or not supposed to eat, or not supposed to wash your body with?
No, I think, honestly, every choice I've made has made me happier. I think that's the kind of confluence we're seeing, is this stuff isn't necessarily heavy and really difficult. Some of it's really easy and good for you. Just in terms of communities, really thinking about walking and things like that. I just read a book that was about happiness being contagious, and that was the number one kind of threat to happiness was people that had long commutes. So it's,
especially in LA, I can see that.
Yeah, it's not this version of don't do that, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's sort of how can we each empower each other and then share that and make that contagious in a way that's going to sweep and just cascade through this entire generation at a time when we need it most. And we can, look how fast we made it not cool to litter. That took 2 seconds in the scheme of things. And, throw cigarette butts out the window and set national parks on fire and all those things.
It's true.
It was a cultural pressure, a social pressure that did those things. And then the bigger, more important issues, the civil rights, marriage equality, things like that. These things do change. It's like Mr. Gore was saying earlier, looking back at how far we have come in a short period of time in terms of, as women, how lucky we are to live in the society we live in and get to make the choices for our bodies and our futures in the way that we can and do. It's incredible. In the scheme of things, it's been a second, and we've made all this change. So I feel like really proud of how far we've come and how far we can go with the climate issue.
It's true, and when you were talking about some of those programs in the past, the no littering, I remember wearing the seatbelt, and like now
all
it's
of
cool.
these
Like,
things.
remember when it wasn't cool to wear a seatbelt? It's like, no, it will save your life.
If you see a woman like, you know, smoking, pushing a baby carriage, like someone would be like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
You know, people's minds have been changed very quickly in the course of one generation. So I think it's just getting that information out there.
And a lot of times, in those ads, they focus them to children. The non-smoking ad, the no littering ad, they
Only
really
you can prevent forest fires.
right. And the kids were like, "It's a bear. I want Smokey the Bear to be my friend."
Yeah.
How do you see children and the younger generations fitting into this world?
I mean, it's amazing how many of them are really aware. You know, they're more aware of the way they use resources. They're more aware of kind of not leaving the faucet going and things like that. I mean, I'm about to become an aunt for the first time. I'm very
Congratulations,
excited.
future auntie.
Yes, I'm going to be the best auntie. But you know, it's crazy to think about the world that she's coming into, and you know, ways that we're definitely going to, you know, help her learn as she grows, and we want to, you know, make sure that she inherits a world where she's not always fleeing the new superstorm, you know, because that could happen in the next generation. But I feel like I've never felt more excited and more hopeful about not only, you know, the war of hearts and minds and general public opinion, but the things that we're actually doing. You know, the energy grids that we've looked at today are so exciting.
I don't want to get negative, but I want to go a little negative for a second and then positive. What do you think is our biggest threat right now? And are you seeing that threat being diminished?
I mean, I think our biggest threat was denialism, and we have seen that diminished a lot. Certainly because I think people, you know, it's an issue that came to their doorstep with a lot of really extreme weather events that almost all scientists agreed were, you know, the aggregate, you know, was that climate change was at fault. And now I think, you know, I really wish we could push forward policy. I wish it was more a part of the conversation when we're having political debates. I wish it was more front and center. I think, you know, too, with having businesses really internalize the cost of carbon in some way, that we don't want a couple of people to get super rich and then everybody on the streets paying the cost with, you know, what's happening to our planet.
It's true. When you think of regular cars and their emissions and childhood asthma rates, and
I think when you
scary.
set out to make products, I think there's a certain way you can look, you know, down your supply chain and really, you know, green things in a really responsible way. And I think that consumers already will certainly flock to you if you do. So,
how do you spread the word to your family, to your friends? Are they? I have friends in my family that are on both sides of the aisle, and it's always nice when I kind of sit down and talk to them, and we kind of see each other's sides. How does that work for you?
yeah, I mean, of course I have family and friends with all kinds of politics, but I think it really is, you know, something we can all band together on. It's certainly, you know, it's pretty clear at this point. I think we've gone past that, I hope. Even friends that have very different politics about other issues certainly agree that it's a problem that we're all trying to find a solution to. And I think it's less about, as we were saying earlier, about either or and this or that, and about all of these solutions. Like, we need everybody.
Exactly.
We need renewables. We need, you know, to some degree natural gas, but we need to really not depend on any one thing to be the bridge. Like, we really need to
diversify.
Diversify. These are all good solutions that we can encourage. And, you know, I think in like they were saying earlier as well about as individuals looking at where we invest and green tech, I think we need to encourage these innovations to happen as quickly as they can.
I agree. Is there any company out there that you really enjoy, or anybody that's kind of your green idol that you look up to?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I mean, I love Patagonia. I love the 1% for the planet model, and the idea that you really have affection for something over time and it gets better. Gosh.
Oh, I totally put you on the spot for that one.
know.
Sorry.
I mean, I have a lot of friends who are a lot greener than I am. I think any actor who says that they're a green, have a green lifestyle, there is that thing about flying. Like, we all fly a lot. But I have some friends that are really back to the land, like sustainable agriculture all the way. So
I was getting some interesting comments, which I wanted on my Twitter and my Facebook, and somebody brought that up. And I think the hard thing is,
we're not experts or saints.
Exactly, and to totally cut out flying, some people could do that, but to totally cut out flying, I think is I mean, I know I couldn't. That's my job. It's all over the place.
Sure. But yeah, there's friends of mine that have a really, beautiful, idyllic kind of lifestyle where they don't fly that often.
Right.
And they're very connected to, how they use resources and how they treat the planet.
Yeah. Private jets. We can probably get rid of private jets. Unless somebody makes like an electric one, though, that would be amazing.
They're working on it.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. What is your big message of hope? We're doing 24 reasons for hope. What is your personal message for hope, or your personal idea of hope for our planet?
I think that, it's not just looking to these, magic silver bullets of technological solutionism that somebody in Silicon Valley is just going to fix it for us. Even though that, there's definitely some exciting things happening. I think that we can kind of look at some of those solutions and get a lot of hope, but also look to each other. That I think if you're working as part of any community of change, like feeling that spark in other people, it's like what Mark Ruffalo was saying earlier, that anytime you start to lose hope, it's because maybe, if he's starting to lose hope, he's not doing enough. And so as long as you're engaged and connecting with other people and really feeling like you're working together to improve and restore our planet, then I feel like that's not only hope, that's optimism.
And it's got to be the answer. It's every day, those just little, if everybody just made little things throughout their day, all around the world, it would be a huge impact.
Yeah, it's true.
It's really the power of the collective.
It's true.
Of all of us. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and spending 2 hours. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no, I had a great time. I was so nervous earlier to be with this super expert. I was like, oh my goodness. But it was a nice symbol of, I think a lot of us have felt like, well, I'm not educated enough or smart enough to handle this complex issue, and what can I do? But it truly is, we are all in this together.
We're all in it together.
So it's nice to be a part of that conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.